too riled up about much. So if there's something that you feel like you need to let me know, like turn on the televisions, Professor Latois. That would be, a good way to start what we're doing. Why are they not projecting?
Take a second to.
Are they up now? Okay. Okay, so there you go. So if there's something that you have questions about, suggestions to make, anything like that, please feel free to speak with me, email me, whatever. I'm not gonna, and if you have questions that I think the whole class would like to hear the answer to, I will anonymize your email and reply to everybody. Okay, so if you think, I'm not gonna embarrass you by, leaving your name on an email, so I wouldn't do that. So basically, pediatrics is an amazing subspecialty of medicine. I practiced it for about 11 years. I absolutely love pediatrics. I kind of didn't want to go into it initially because, number one, I think everybody expected me with my background and my family to either go into women's health or pediatrics, and I just don't do what people expect of me sometimes. So I muddled around in some other subspecialties, but then I wound up back in pediatrics because that's what I truly love. And I think that as a gray-haired lady practicing pediatrics, it's easy to be a part of the family, and look at the family dynamics, and that's a lot of it. For younger people without kids, pediatrics would be really something you'd have to prove yourself in, if that makes sense to you guys. But let's see here. So let's talk about the syllabus. I did post it yesterday. I updated it. We're only going to have 2 grades in this class, Exam 1 and Exam 2. And I'm really sorry about that, but I'm kind of glad about that. So it makes it kind of easy on us both. What I haven't decided is how the exams will be weighted. They will be weighted based on the material. Okay, so if because like I said, I had some lecturers back out. I'm still posting to the calendar, so if you see a block of time, unless it's like 8 to 10, which I probably won't fill, but if you see a block of time and you need to schedule something, consider that there are still things to be posted to the calendar, okay? So the exams will be 100% of your grade. They'll be weighted 60-40, maybe 50-50, just depends on the contents, because I'm gonna be as fair as possible. Classroom, you guys can interrupt me at any time. I'm not, I don't lose my train of thought just because you interrupt me. I just lose my train of thought just for other reasons, and so it's going to get lost anyway, so don't feel bad. Don't feel like you're, causing a ruckus or anything. Please try to be on time, especially when we do have a guest lecturer. These are volunteers from our community that come in and donate their time to you. They're not compensated in any way, so it's really important to be respectful of that, okay? Please, I will try to get their lectures up and posted before on D2L. Please try to preview them and maybe think of some questions. Every lecturer likes to feel like they've really engaged you. So, to ask questions and to be an active listener would be a great thing. It's good for us too, but especially for the guest lecturers that are donating their time. The other professors in the program are all going to help with the pediatrics too. So Professor Roark will be doing MSK, Professor Brooks will be doing ENT, and Professor Reggio will be doing pediatric neurology. Any questions so far? Okay, great. Really? Anything? Anybody have any questions about anything? Yes?
So I know the calendar is a little empty right now. Are we just going to go day by day? Or?
No. I'm trying to get stuff up there. I understand that you guys like to know your schedule. Everybody likes to know their schedule. But it's just, I don't have it yet. So as I'm getting it, I did quite a bit just since noon. So you might see that it's been filled up a little bit since noon. But I've still got some other things to put on there. I think all of you know what's going on in my personal life, so I might, that is very distracting. It's glioblastoma multiforme. It's the worst possible scenario. Our family's having we're adjusting. We're gonna get through this, but right now it's kind of difficult. I think he's considering doing a little bit of radiation and some chemo. I forgot the name of the pill, but it's an oral chemo. It's not anything that you have to go for infusion therapy or anything. So I might ditch one of my colleagues' lectures in order to go to an appointment or something, so that I will be here as absolutely much as possible. Okay. So how do you approach a pediatric patient? They're very, very different than the SPs you guys have been dealing with, and even the patients over at Good Shepherd. They're very different. Kids are not, most kids are not naturally open to strangers, so you've got to take some time and really build a rapport with them. And they're not just short adults. Kids they're unique. That's why we teach this as a separate course. They are unique in the medical realm. Oh, I thought this was cute. I like cartoons. The early bird really gets the worm. Plus, my kids are all composters, so I thought that was kind of hilarious. And there's a couple of really cute pediatric patients I may or may not be related to. That's Isabella Grace and Morrison Paul. I'm telling you, my brain is just. But anyway, so this is several years old. Morrison is now 6, and Isabella is now 10. So that was several years ago. Those are my only 2 grandchildren so far. And I'm telling the kids, hey, I didn't have 6 of you guys so that I could have no grandkids. Step it up. You're gay, I don't care, no excuses. True, it's true. Okay, so always get a prenatal history. So let's talk about a new patient. You've got a new kid coming into your practice, 3 years old. Part of that child's history is the 9 months that they spent hopefully 9 months that they spent in the room. So you always got to start with a prenatal history, okay? Were there complications during your pregnancy? Did the mom have to go on bed rest? Did she have preeclampsia? Was the baby born full term? Was it a scheduled C-section? Was it a natural, spontaneous onset of labor and delivery? Did you have any abnormal ultrasounds? Even if they were later proved to be fine, but did you have anything abnormal initially, okay? If the clinic utilizes a pre-printed history, please use it. I don't know, you guys are, I don't know how much experience you have on the patient end of things, but you sit there and you go through all that paperwork and then you hand it to them and then they ask you questions like they didn't even read your paperwork or know what you did, and that's frustrating. I'm learning that from my husband's point of view. It's frustrating. So if your clinic utilizes any kind of pre-printed form history, use it. Just look at it before you walk in the door. Note anything unusual that you might want to get more questions about. Be sensitive. Pick up on verbal and nonverbal clues. If they talk and don't mention a spouse or a partner, they might be a single parent. And that the child's family in which they're thriving and growing up is a huge part of what you need to know as a practitioner. Just like we do the social history on our SPs, it's just as important for the pediatric patient. Some families look like this. Some families might look like this, which, by the way, that would be my son, Murphy. I'm sorry, this is just the cutest picture. Look at that kid. Boy. And what's funny is that look on his father's face I've seen so many times. Anyway, so that's my daughter-in-law, Jackie, and that's Isabella. I think they were 3 and 8 at that point. And then some families might look like this. There might be 2 dads, there might be 2 moms, you know, you just don't assume. And sometimes if you do assume, it can make them uncomfortable. So don't assume. I pretended to be, I had to be an SP one day. And I remember exactly who it was, but they said, "Are you married?" And I said, "Yes." And then the student asked, "To a man?" And I thought, oh, yay, I love that. So that was just really, I thought that was awesome and very understanding. You know, a lot of times we've got, in this generation, we got a lot of grandparents raising kids, you know. I mean, that could be the situation. They could have just adopted older in their, you know, later in their life. I don't know. So, but, you know, we got to understand where they're coming from and who provides that nuclear family of origin for that child. History is different with a pediatric patient because basically it's usually third party. It's usually the mother or the primary caregiver that is giving you the history for the patient. Often the patient doesn't speak themselves, but if they do, let them speak. I mean, and ask if the kid's 5 years old, ask them, not the parent or the person who's sitting there. And another thing is, try not to get in the habit of calling the parent's mom. They're not your mom. They're the kid's mom. You know, learn their first name. You know, you learn the kid's name, learn mom's first name too. That helps a lot, okay? Remember, parents, when they do give you a history, it's through their interpretation. I mean, it's just like when they give you their own history when you're treating an adult patient. You have to ask those questions to get to the heart of it. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. As far as the physical exam goes, it's important to be really flexible, go slow. You know, building trust takes a lot of time. I had a patient one time, and I learned this the hard way. I had a patient one time that I think both of her parents must have been librarians. I'm pretty sure that there had never been a raised voice in her house. You know, Dad usually brought this little girl in. She was about 9 months old, which is a really fearful time anyway. 9 months old, they go through they have a big stranger anxiety around that age. And I'm just, you know, me, so I'm just like, "Hello, how are you?" And I scared this little girl, and she burst into tears. It was horrible, and it took her about 2 years not to freak out when she came to the doctor's office after that. So, you know, you always knock, because you never know when there's a little person on the other side of the door. Knock, open slow. Knock and open the door slowly. And some kids freak out even when the parents, when they pull up in the parking lot. You know, they come into the office already crying sometimes. But that's something that we try to avoid by not doing anything more startling to them. I mean, they're gonna freak out generally when they get shots, but you know, we try not to freak them out otherwise. Okay? So a lot of times I use my knees as a table. I'll scoot my little rolly stool, which everybody will know which patients to not leave the rolly stool in the exam room while they're waiting for the provider to come in. And the MA will just very nonchalantly kick it into the hallway before she shuts the door after she puts the patient in her room. Because the kids you don't want a kid injured in your office, it's horrible. So I a lot of times get on that rolly stool and I will just scoot over and use my knees as a table, just knee to knee with the caregiver, either the mother or the father, whoever's there. And a lot of times I can do a pretty good, I can do an excellent physical exam with the kid laying like that rather than up on the table. So save everything that's too upsetting to the very end. So if you know the kid hates having their ears looked in, save it till the end. I always do, if they wear diapers, I don't bother with gloves. But if they don't wear diapers, I always wear gloves if I'm doing a genitalia or checking their bottom or something. So, but then you always wash your hands afterwards, of course. The otoscope. Oh, and here, I've said several times, you speak to the patient. If the patient doesn't answer and the parent or the caregiver does, well then you can speak to them, but the kids will tell you. They'll tell you what's going on, okay? Otoscope technique, I am so pleased that you guys have learned the proper technique for otoscopy with the little finger on the cheek, because that is especially important in pediatrics. One kid whipping their head and jerking and getting that otoscope rammed down their canal will make for a horrible ear exam for until they're probably 9 or 10. I mean, it'll be awful. So I'm really glad that you guys have been taught that. A lot of times you got to look at the patient. A pediatric patient can be very, very sick with very little fever, and they can be not very sick at all with a really high fever. So you got to look at the patient. Okay, does that make sense? All right, anything else? Any more questions at all? Okay, this is hashtag stuff we never did with our own kids. We went to Minnesota, and Izzy had a day out of school, and both Murphy and Jackie had to work, so we went to Minnesota just to keep the kids for a day, and we took them to the arcade, which we never did with our kids. Then there's my husband Paul there too. That was the coolest game though. I mean, I actually played that one. It was fun. All right, so that's it. That was not an hour. So let's just move on to the cardiology lecture. This will take me, I'm going to